All right, there's more on the education front I want to turn to now. And to do so, I want to bring in our own Meg Kilgannon, who has been tracking all of this. She is a senior fellow here for Education Studies and a former member of the Trump Department of Education. Meg, welcome back.
Thanks, me, Tony.
All right, you heard the conversation I was having with Bruce. How prevalent is that across the country? I mean, we're hearing more and more about this.
Well, it's important to consider the problem that the publishing industry is having getting books off the shelves in bookstores. And so a market for them to pursue is public funding, right? Send it to public libraries, but especially public schools. So this a tremendous amount of material they have in the young adult category and in all the for the little kids. They have leaned really hard into the woke agenda, and they are pumping these books out and giving them, creating awards, making them popular, and they're getting them into school libraries.
Now, this is not new. I mean, I can go back 15 years or further when these books were coming in. I think there's probably a stronger flow, but I think there's also a greater understanding of what's happening. More parents are aware, and so that's why we're hearing more about this.
Well, the diversity, equity, and inclusion push means that books with very anti-racist comment that's actually, we know, racist content, books with LGBT content, trans content, all of that allegedly inclusive material is put out through the libraries. Some of it is even inserted in special collections in classroom libraries.
Right.
So as a parent, you really have to be engaged with your school.
But that's making a difference. As parents are involved, you have school district by school district having different approaches. Bruce was talking about one they're taking there, but sometimes they're just completely removed if parents flag them.
It's so great when you have dads stepping up too. Moms are great, but it makes such a tremendous difference when you have a dad engaged. It's just really wonderful to hear.
I want to transition to another topic. Earlier we were talking about the NEA convention last week, and we talked with one of the teachers that was a part of that convention. But there's another teachers union, the American Federation of Teachers, and they recently had their meeting. And it's interesting. They were doing some polling on education, and the polling that they were doing was through Hart Research, which is a Democratic leaning or a Democratic research polling firm. And it was very stunning that they admitted what they did and even published it. And that is, at present, now consider this is coming from a Democratic pollster, but at present, Republicans had a 39 to 38% advantage over Democrats when it comes to education. It's never been close before.
No, and the fact that that's coming out of a Democrat polling firm is truly amazing. They polled battleground states, so you had 1,700 people from places as diverse as Florida to Michigan, right? If you had polled just 1,000 people in Florida versus 1,000 people in Michigan, imagine the difference in the results that you would have gotten. So they did their best to get the best results they could.
Right. They're always
and they're still bad.
I know.
For them.
Because Democrats historically have had an advantage when it comes to public education.
Sure.
They've lost that advantage, and they're bemoaning that fact, and part of it they say is conservatives have portrayed teachers and Democrats as child predators. Okay, but then I'm reading from an article. It says that, but the Democratic pollsters who went into the field for the American Federation of Teachers concluded that most voters want their kids taught the good and the bad about race relations in America, less so about gender identity, and may reward the party that focuses more on fundamental instruction than ideological warfare. Well, that leaves the Democrats out.
What a relief, right?
I mean, that's
if
what
only
parents
they would
want.
listen, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're asking for. And it was really interesting, the big difference between the questions on gender identity and sex education versus the CRT stuff. Parents, it didn't matter if you were liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat. Nobody wants the gender stuff.
Yeah.
That should be pretty clear from this poll.
That was actually pretty, because on the topic of sexual preference and gender identity, 58% of those that were polled said they are dissatisfied with the way the issues are discussed in school. Now, again, I just want to preface, this is a Democratic pollster that's doing this.
Yeah.
And so they're going to poll in such a manner that would favor their perspective. A 31% plurality, including 12% of self-described liberals, said students are too young for this material. So nobody wants it, as you said. Even liberals, self-described liberals, said we shouldn't be doing this.
Right, and they definitely don't want it in the youngest
So
grades.
why are they doing it?
Well, they have an agenda, and it was that exchange between Josh Hawley and the law professor from Berkeley. That's at a very high level of government, but that is the kind of exchange that's happening in school meetings across the country when parents go to the school and say, "Why did you change my child's name?"
Yeah.
And the people at the other side of the table for the school just try to educate the parent about gender identity.
Well,
I mean.
Think about what's happening in the classroom,
Right.
where you have basically one-way communication and a teacher is indoctrinating the children.
Yes.
I mean, because the children can't push back like Josh Hawley did.
Right, right. And no, they certainly can't. And the arrogance, her demeanor of sighing in response to him, her disrespect for the situation and the questioning, his genuine desire to dialogue with her was not met with a genuine desire to dialogue. She was going to demagogue, and
Right.
that's the situation here. The polling on teacher preference was interesting. They don't like teacher unions, even the Democrats don't, but they seem to be relatively happy with their teachers, which is similar to the polling you always get on Congress,
Right.
right?
They don't
Everybody
like
hates Congress, but we love
They
our
like their-
Congress
yeah.
person. So.
There was a memo that accompanied the survey, and they've developed kind of a four-part strategy, communication strategy. Number one is they want to frame Republicans as politicizing education. Mm-hmm. And this is very typical.
We're doing it.
Yeah, right. That's very typical. I remember going back to the marriage debates, that we wanted to talk about them. We didn't want to talk about this stuff. Homosexuality and all that. We didn't want to talk about that. We were just having to push back on this rapid push of an agenda. So frame Republicans as politicizing education. Number two, emphasize Democrats' preference for investing in schools. Number three, highlight the most extreme proposals from conservatives. I think the extreme proposals are on the other side. And number four is reinforce the idea that parents have an important role in ensuring their kids get a good education. Well, that certainly runs counter to what the Biden administration has been calling parents as domestic terrorists.
Right, right. And so when they talk about extreme proposals from conservatives, they'll try to call the gentleman you had on earlier a book banner, right?
Yeah.
He wants to ban books. No, he wants to have intelligent and responsible selection of library materials to be put in front of children. That has nothing to do with banning books. So this whole business of framing is what is really important for us to understand, that they are going to try to paint parents as the enemy, even while they claim to be our friends.
But what has happened, Meg, is that what parents are doing is working.
It is. Yes, it is. They're responding, right? This is clearly, they wouldn't do a cover poll like this one is to try to figure out what's wrong if things were the same as they were a year ago.
So what do parents need to do?
So we need you to get involved, consider running for office, run a parents group, speak to your school board members, go to www.frcaction.org/schools for our resources. Become engaged, because we need you there. Your presence makes a huge difference.
All right, Meg Kilgannon, always great to talk with you.
Thank you. It's
Thanks
great
so
to be
much
here.
for joining us.